Hey everybody, welcome to SoFly episode 11. It's August 3rd, and you might be hearing something really nice. Got new sound, upgraded our mics, upgraded everything. Mitch here, and Gab.
What's up?
Yilma is working right now. Still, he's over at the office doing some late night pitch stuff, and so it's just Gab and I. But we have a really super cool guest today. And we'll introduce him in just a second. But before we do that, we just wanted to talk a bit more about this new upgraded sound. It's amazing. Right, Cam?
So good.
And we could do stuff like this. Isn't that so good? Like I don't know if we're ever going to use sound effects, but we have the ability to do so.
But yeah, our new system looks pretty sexy right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it sounds amazing, especially for guests. Speaking of guests, we've got someone very special on the show today, and let's get the show on the road. I think we're ready to roll. For those of you who don't know, Nick Groves is a fly fishing fanatic in Southern Ontario, and if you are too, it's likely you've crossed paths. That's because he's also a well-known instructor and guide based out of Grand River Outfitting in Fergus, Ontario. Fergus, Ontario is, in fact, where Nick grew up and began fly fishing at the age of 14. The Grand River, Nick's home water, is no stranger to his incredible streamers that are tied with the intention of catching big, hungry, brown trout. Nick, how's it going?
Good, guys. How are you?
Good,
awesome.
Very, very nice intro. Hey. Short and sweet.
That's right. I think it was all right, too.
I think you're good. Yeah, 14, the right age. Yeah.
Awesome.
You didn't mention how old I am now, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Say it. How old are you now? So how long have you been fly fishing for?
I'm in my 37th year.
Wow, you would never know. You look younger than I am.
I was in school, I took a number of years off, close to a decade, where I was just your normal university kid, and then lived in Guelph for a while and didn't pick up a fly rod until probably, probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Probably 7 years ago, I got back into it and started getting pretty obsessed. A lot more so than growing up as a young kid in Fergus. So.
Yeah.
I'm the same way because my dad showed it to me when I was like 6, 7 years old. Then I fished all the way to like mid teenage, and then I discover intoxicants and women's. And then took a long break, and then in my late 20s, picked it up again.
Yeah, we'll go figure. You have to live out your prime the right way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, after a while with the same girlfriend, you picked up fly fishing. It's kind of like the new mistress.
Fergus is a good spot for that stuff, though.
For both, yeah. For all three.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was actually, before I took my leave of absence from fishing, I when I was a little kid, I actually was kind of a dork. I collected bugs a lot more than I actually fished, believe it or not, because tying was actually one of the most interesting things to me. And right when I started was sort of when Ian Martin's book about fly fishing the Grand River came out, and I became obsessed with it. And more times than not, I was down in the river with a sieve net, collecting insects, trying to figure out as a young teenager, how to actually preserve samples of mayflies and aquatic insects. So that's what actually led me into university back at that time. So yeah, I spent a lot of time at the bench in my little room in my basement and tied flies. And fishing was really good. It was a lot different back then on the Grand than it is now. And yeah,
that's definitely something we want to get into a little bit. Like, what's the differences? Because the thing with Gab and I, because Gab hasn't, both of us haven't really fished the Grand a whole lot. Like, I've only been in Toronto for 3 years. Gab's been here for about the same time, 3 or 4 years, something like that. So we haven't really fished. So we really just know the Grand that exists today. And what was it like fishing it back then? Like, what's the differences now?
Well, it's tough to say, guys. Like, I think right around, because as you now know and everyone knows how old I am, I was just starting out at the onslaught of the fish stocking. You know, the original group of Friends of the Grand that started the brown trout program with the M&R. And so I kind of, I still have news clippings in our local paper about the original dudes, like the Ken Collins and the Larry McGrattens and the Al Newsoms and, Steve May and those guys that started this whole thing going, we're going back 24, 25 years ago now. And Back then there was a lot of excitement because fly fishing, if you think about it, 20 to 25 years ago, that's a long time, and things have changed a lot. And the river's still the river. The river is still, it's a tailwater, so it's very, very controlled. It's very predictable. We know exactly when and what kind of flows and river temperatures and oxygen temps we're going to get. But the bottom line is, one of the things that stays consistent is it continues to be a world-class brown trout fishery in a tailwater, and it still to this day produces some of the biggest fish that I see even in a lot of my travels. Fun thing about it is they're not easy, and they're finicky, and they're very smart, because we also live in the most heavily populated area of Ontario, right?
Yeah.
So we've got some very well-educated trout that live in some very difficult conditions. If we look at what the river's like right now, we're hot. Those fish are adapting and adjusting, and they're very tolerant to the conditions that we have. So, back in the day, the river was still the river. We have climate change and everything that's actually sort of been documented over the last 20 years, and things change a bit. Season to season, things change quite a bit. This year, it's been nonstop rain, and 20 to 30 cubic meters a second has been sort of the norm. Last year, we get above low summer flows the whole year. Last year, you would think it would be just dismal, but it was probably my most productive year on the Grand.
Oh, really? Yeah.
20 years ago, when Ian wrote his book and documented sort of the hatches of the Grand and started that whole thing, there was a lot. I would say the biggest difference that we see now is that the hatches have sort of shifted. We had pretty textbook sort of Catskill, Upper New York sort of predictable mayfly hatches, and that's predominantly what I, as I remember it, fish would key in on, and fly fishermen alike would key in on, as the mayfly hatches, starting early spring with the Hendricksons and right through till the blue-winged olives and tricos later in the season. Now I'm a streamer guy primarily now, so the hatches, aren't of utmost importance and nerdiness to me as much as bait fish and big stuff. But the hatches have definitely changed. The fish are just as big, if not bigger. We've seen success rates in our fish surviving. We haven't seen a lot of fish kills over the past few years due to cold freezing or hot water in the summer. So it's just changed. We've shifted. I've seen a big migration primarily from the textbook sort of Catskill mayfly hatches, is sort of changed into guys that are, by June they're down to size 24 midges. Predominant midge hatches go on year round. Crane flies are huge. Caddis flies still remain the predominant sort of insect food source on the Grand. But back then it was sort of by the day and even by the week you could totally see the mayflies with the Hendricksons. Then it would change into the Isonychias and the March Browns and the Foxes and then the Cahills, and it would be sort of pretty regimented. And now you'll get sporadic hatches and blends of all of it. But unless you're out with a headlamp at night, you generally don't see that kind of activity during the day that we used to see. Like, when I started, I was fishing pipe cleaners and bumblebees, and I could go out and get 6 15-inch fish as a 14-year-old that were all rising in the same hole, and could do it every night. And that just doesn't happen anymore. We've got guys like all of us that are out there teaching fish how to be smart in small water. And that I think takes its toll, and we're now 20 years later, and we have an equally as good fishery, just a little bit different.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and that's certainly, I think, a way to think about fishing Southern Ontario in general. Like, we hit the rivers and we're like, man, like the pressure is just absolutely crazy. There's people and the hatches, like you say, the hatches have changed and everything's kind of so you take into account all of those other factors when you're fishing, and it's kind of like, it's not just about like what's the trout, what's the trout thinking, it's also like, what is this trout in this specific pool thinking, because of what it's been conditioned by.
For sure. We're so fortunate though, to think that the areas that we live, when trout are hurt in midsummer, we can go target any other species of fish in a very world-class sort of fishery. Like, the smallmouth bass fisheries we have in our local tributaries is insane. Even on the Upper Grand where we fish for browns, this year, some of the bass, walleye, and pike that we've seen streamer fishing are like, trophy even in the Muskokas. It's a pretty cool place to be, where we are fortunate that we can basically, we don't have a year-round fishery, but we have basically year-round species that we can target within half an hour of our house. You know?
Yeah, and that's such a good point to hit too, because I think a lot of people don't think about it like that. They don't really think about the fish's, I guess their well-being, and they forget about all the warm water fishing that we've got around here.
Especially on the Grand, I found, because there's so many sections that you can go on in Fergus. You can fish for brown trout, for bass, for carp. I've had my best carp fly fishing was on the Grand around Fergus, and when I tell people I go to Fergus, they're like, "Oh, brown trout." I'm like, "No, there's actually ginormous carp. The fishing is good." But in one river, so many species. Like if the trout is not on, you can just switch rods or switch your fly, and then start targeting another species, like right at that moment in the same pool, basically. In some areas, not everywhere, but I think that's what it's so great about the Grand.
What's like a good like to gauge temperature? What should people kind of look for in terms of avoid trout in blank temperature?
Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly enough, guys, when you're out tomorrow, have a look at some of the spots, some of the accesses. We, as a board member now, I've been a board member of Friends of the Grand for, I believe I'm in my second or third year. Back in the day, they actually had signage that was posted at all the major access points. It had a dial that was developed by the M&R biologists that kind of we could sort of move the hand around and show you kind of where you are in the warning zone for targeting trout. Well, we dug those out of one of the old guy's basement, and my friend Jason has put those back up and is maintaining them. Interestingly enough, the biologists at the M&R at the time, the way they had it was a little bit conservative on the sort of green light to fish for browns.
Okay.
My general understanding would be, and rivers over a 24-hour cycle change significantly and interestingly, drastically.
Really?
Two of the things you're looking for, number one, are midday temperatures. What is the peak? What is the river temperature peaking at midday? And we can't compare a tailwater to a natural or a freestone river, or really any other river other than tailwaters that are kind of similar, and there really aren't a lot. So the Grand is just so unique, and basically a brown trout's tolerance, they are the most tolerant of trout species as far as being able to hold on in warmer temps. But your rule of thumb would be midday if you're fishing and you're getting up around the 68 degree Fahrenheit temp. That's probably a time just to sort of back off and either plan your day around an early morning, like a dawn fish, or put the headlamps on and go out at dusk. So the 68 is sort of my red flag. Anything below that, I mean, the fish are going to tell you they're not going to be eating during a peak sun day at 32 degrees, right? So outside, if it's 70 degree water, they're just not going to eat.
Yeah. They're going to be low at the bottom, not moving too much.
Exactly. And one of the other things that happens on our river is we have algae blooms that comes out of the lake every year. And this time of the year, because we had this big flood about a month ago, it sort of scrubbed the rocks clean, and we were pretty fortunate that way. But photosynthesis plays a big part of it too. So a brown trout, their sort of optimum temperature range is in your May and June temperatures, where the river starts at about 45 degrees, and by June, if you have a good spring that's wet and you get a lot of rain, by the end of June you could be getting up into the 57, 58 degrees.
Wow. Okay.
After that, it's a crapshoot. Once you get into the 60 degrees, fish could get slower during the day, so you're going to want to sort of time your day and target when they're going to be most active. Now we're in this point, we're in that zone where we're 68 to, there's rumors of, midday when it was 30 degrees last week, it was hitting 72, 73. Then you're off the water. You don't want to be there, because even if you do hit a fish and a big fish, you're going to stress it out.
They might not even survive. Like these big 20 something inches brown. I mean, it's pretty hot right now. So tomorrow we'll be aware of that. We'll be careful.
Yeah, it's just an awareness. I mean, if you're fighting a 20-inch fish on 6X, and you're not going to want to lose that fish, so you're going to fight him hard, and you're gonna go easy on him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Little bit different if you're fighting him on 15-pound maxima with a 6-inch streamer. He's going to be in the net and out pretty quick. So one of the other big things about our brown trout is oxygen, dissolved oxygen in the river. It's available on the GRCA website, coming out of the Shan Dam in Bellwood. But photosynthesis and dissolved oxygen can fluctuate dramatically over the course of a day, which is why sort of night fishing when the river temps are high is probably your best and most friendly bet from a moral and ethical standpoint, because that's when the photosynthesis stops in the river and you get more oxygen flowing through.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
I was pretty much done.
Okay. Yeah, no, because you mentioned night fishing, and that's something that I want to do since I moved to Ontario, basically. Because I know that those big browns, they don't get that fat eating like mayfly and little nymphs. How's your night fishing? Like around the Grand, like would you use like streamer, mouse?
All big stuff, man. Like obviously when the sun goes down, brown trout and trout in general are pretty predatory and nocturnal. Night fishing is something that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, take away your main senses, take away your sight, and picture not even standing in the river actually fishing, but picture walking to the river in the dark. It's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different world of commitment. If you have family or girlfriends or whatever, trust me, I have a 10-month-old at home and a wife who hates me coming home at 1:30 in the morning because it just doesn't work out that well. But night fishing is effective. It's I wouldn't say reliable. It's equally, if not way more challenging than fishing during the day, just because you are committing time to fishing in the dark. The bite could be on or it could be off, but if it's off, you've wasted a day, It's all the same kind of commitments as trying to become productive during the day. I wouldn't say that it's a shoe-in or a sure bet. It's a pain in the ass at the best of times, because during the summer months when you're targeting them on mice or big streamers, you're also sitting on the banks, getting eaten alive by bugs. It's balmy. It's hot.
The red ants, eh? The red ants are crazy in southern Ontario.
Mosquitoes and everything else.
Ants in your pants. And we got to watch out for ticks. And we got to watch out for giant hogweed. And
battle zone.
But that's all the bad stuff. The good news is that some of the biggest browns that I've ever caught in my life are night fishing. And legitimate night fishing on foot is a very committed type of thing to do. It takes time, but super effective. You'll talk to guys over the years that dry fly fishermen that you wouldn't see them during the day. They've spent the last 15 years fishing this river only at night.
Well, the one thing is no people, right? Less people.
Less people for sure.
Big benefit of it. And then I guess the other thing, well, for that, the whole night fishing and, catching huge fish and everything else, for me, there's two streams of questions for you. One, why, and this is probably a longer answer, but why are you catching such big fish at night? Why are such big fish feeding at night? And then two, I know you're a huge streamer guy, and is that what you're using at night to fish for these big night fish?
I'm streamer fishing day and night, to be honest with you, and it's just become an evolution to where I'm at in my head with fishing. Not even with trout, but I can take my streamer boxes that I'm targeting brown trout on the Grand, and I can come home with 6 pike, half a dozen walleye between me and my buddy that are out doing it together, Jay, and a few trout. It's just, there's so much to it.
Yeah.
There's so much to it, and it's so versatile, and it's so scientific, and it's such a big challenge. I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent there. I think your original question was, why do the big fish come out at night?
Well, yeah, let's do it in 2 parts, because it's certainly I think it's probably a pretty robust question. But I guess, yeah, like, I mean, I've always read in magazines and people saying this, and now you brought it up. Big fish at night, big browns at night. You fish at night, and you're going to catch big 18, 24-inch fish.
I'll just say, I'll just add to that like, big fish don't get big for no reason, right? Like, they're smarter. Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to get eaten by herons or osprey, and so they fish at night because they're invisible.
For sure. Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at a trout's primary things that they're looking for is breaks in the current so that they can rest, having food sources close by, and having cover. And when the lights are out, it's all hands on deck. They can cruise around wherever the hell they want and eat whatever they want, which is pretty cool. And the bigger fish that come out and feed at that time, they're also not worried about other predators in the river, because there's not a lot of pike. You could argue that, but there's not a lot of pike in the Grand that are going to take a bite out of a 2-foot brown trout.
Right.
They might have some battle wounds, but that's going to be about it. So why do they feed at night?
Yeah.
They're a nocturnal fish species. I would argue that a lot of fish feed at night, but the interesting and cool thing is, like, we're targeting them on streamers, but don't get me wrong, guys. At 1 a.m, if I could see my indicator or see my nymph rig that I predominantly would be doing if I was fishing at dawn in certain spots, don't get me wrong, I would be doing that if the fish could see it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of stomachs that are pumped on brown trout in general that aren't full of bugs. From experience and knowledge in the past couple of years, some of the biggest browns on this river, guys have actually pumped some stomachs to have a look, and they're full of midges so small you couldn't even put that on a hook. It's almost like a whale just kind of filtering krill out of the current. It's crazy. It's those random chances that you get a fish with a sculpin or something hanging out of its yap still that's trying to swallow it down and still will eat your fly. Like, that happens quite a bit, but not near as much as these big browns that you look at what's in their stomachs and they're just eating bugs. And that's, I guess, how they get big. I don't know.
Yeah.
But streamer fishing and large predatory fish, it's opportunistic. They're able to cruise around and not be so cautious about who's around, what's going on, and how they're going to get hurt. So they can go look for that big food source. They can move out of the faster runs in the current and the cover, and they can get out there and go hunt, which is what we're doing too. When we're going fishing at night, we're beating the crowds.
Yeah.
We're throwing down some of the senses that both we and the fish have, and we're just going at it. And it's a crapshoot. It's the same as jumping into a pool at 5 a.m. and thinking temp's right, time's right, pool's been rested, fish are going to be here, I know they're here, I got the flies, I see bugs, and you scratch, and you go home scratching your head. Night fishing with streamers is the same sort of thing, and after a few years doing it, you come to a level of acceptance that, just like during the day, the bite's on.
Yeah,
Next
exactly.
day, same conditions. If the bite's off, you'll get to a point in it where you're confident enough in what you're doing, in the flies that you're tying, in your execution of the whole thing, to walk away from that river and say, it's off. Fish weren't on tonight.
Yeah.
I probably in front of 10 fish and they're just not on. And that has taken me 3 years of battling it in my brain to come off the river and say, no, it wasn't on, it wasn't me. And streamer fishing, because you have those nights where it's just so effective, and you have these trophy brown trout that are just insane. that you start to think, well, why can't I do it every night? And why can't the same fly work the next night? And what am I doing? And then it plays on you. But fish do feed at night. The actual scientific reason behind it, I don't know. Probably because of, they can sense that they can get away with a lot more at night than they can during the day.
Mm-hmm. Like you said too, the water temperature fluctuate a lot during the day. At night, obviously, the water must be a lot colder.
Or dropping, I guess. Eh?
Yeah, it drops, so it's probably more energy that way.
For sure. Yeah, well, fish, they're so sensitive to key in on pressure changes. If a storm front rolls in, if I can see a storm coming on the horizon, we know exactly what's going to happen. If it's piss and rain and been consistently raining all day, we also have a different sense on what's going to happen with our confidence and what the bite's going to be like. So they're so in tune with everything that's going on in the water and outside the water that's just crazy. Like, after witnessing it so many times, you can almost, lick your finger, stick it in the air and say, no, I'm not going out tonight kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, you never know because things are always different that one night when your buddy says, well, forget it, I'm going, and he bangs like 3 or 4 fish.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Sometimes you just got to do it,
There is consistency and predictability, and definitely at night, if you put the time in, you put the commitment in, and you know that you're confident in what you're doing, which is the majority of fly fishing, you're going to find fish that are going to eat, and it's going to blow your mind. It's pretty cool.
Man,
it's like catching an alligator in the dark.
Oh man,
we need to do it. Like before trout season ends, let's do at least one night.
Oh man,
we need to try it.
Putting it like alligator, pulling in an alligator. That sounds pretty fun.
And like tying mice, it's like my favorite flies ever to tie. Like I have so many miles, I've never used them because. So I think that would be a good opportunity for me to let it shine.
Yeah, mousing is so interesting, and mousing for me when I'm online and I'm looking at guys that I've had the opportunity to meet, Michigan, and it's so close to us guys, but Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and all the big water on the east and west side of Michigan, those guides over there, that's all they do. They work a three week in a row every day, every night. They're guiding, but they night fish. They will put guys in the boat and they will leave at 11 o'clock at night, and they'll roll in bleary-eyed at 3 and 4 in the morning, because it's just that effective, both dry fly fishing and mousing and streamer fishing at night. It's pretty cool, and that's a lot of the stuff that I've learned has been from guys abroad and the big names in the game that are doing it right. But yeah, it's been proven.
Yeah,
and their water's not a whole lot different than ours.
Yeah, I mean, do you fish down in the States a lot, or you go to Michigan a lot, or is it just kind of, have you ever gone up to, well, there's so much water in the States, like when I was, because I'm from Ottawa, when I was living in Ottawa, I used to fish upstate New York all the time, and it was just like a totally different game there, like fishing on the rivers. The fish were so different. When I came here, it was totally different, I wonder if it's like that all across the upper states.
Yeah, like I've only recently, well, I guess in the last 5-6 years, I've really done a lot of traveling. My first 2 trips were out west in southwest Alberta, right when I was sort of getting back into things, and did some camping trips down on the Livingston, the Old Man, the Crow, and catching cutthroats and stuff. And it was really fun. It was awesome. My best friend lives in Calgary, so I've done that quite a few times. The eastern states I've never actually been down to. My best friend that I fish with, my real hardcore fishing buddy, Jay King, I met him and we decided without really knowing each other to head up to the Sioux on our first spring steelhead trip. And after that, him and I became sort of obsessed together as a team with fishing and traveling. And our first trip, or our second trip together, was down to the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, fishing the delayed harvest season for brook trout and browns and rainbows. And it was just awesome, right? But this was, I think it would have been 4 years ago now. So, pre-complete insanity with streamers and targeting and hunting big fish. So we did that trip. It was awesome. We have been over to Michigan. Is sort of piqued my interest quite a bit. We've been to Michigan once and fished the Osable, the big waters of the Osable below Mayo, which is probably, well, it's the holy waters. I mean, Ernest Hemingway fished there when he was around, and
That's badass.
What kind of fish is on the Osable? Like steelhead or brown brooks or?
Similar to us. So basically, the Osable River flows through basically the middle of the Michigan Upper Peninsula, and it's sort of the same latitude as kind of Owen Sound and Georgian Bay. So it has very similar water structure, hydrology. It is dammed, and similar to the Saugeen, it has every fish species you could want, from steelhead in the lower section, resident and wild brown trout in the big waters of the Osable below Mayo, which is town, and then above that you have the holy waters, which is sort of grayling, predominantly rainbows and brook trout, I believe. So we were obviously at that point targeting, our trip over there was to target browns and streamer fish, and we unfortunately made it a little bit too late and missed the bite, but we were fortunate enough to be right in the primetime Hendrickson season, and just the hatches over there, you could literally scoop up a handful of spinners in your hand at dusk that you could fill a soup bowl with. It was just insane.
Man, that's insane.
Wow.
And if you get on to some of the guys that are guiding over there on the Osable, they have kind of what we used to have as those textbook mayfly hatches back in the day, but times 1,000. Like,
Man.
Jay and I couldn't even believe it when we saw the insect hatches, and we didn't have the river dialed in. We were just there for a few days, but
Yeah.
The guides over there, you go from your Hendricksons to your Isonychias to your Drakes to your, right now they're just finishing a 2.5 week long hex hatch that has produced some of the biggest brown trout I've ever seen.
That's unreal.
And now they're in
2
a
weeks hatch.
Yeah. So it's pretty awesome. So we did that, and then right around the Michigan time was when Jay and I sort of, for the last 4 years, I've been watching, and I know there's a lot of guys that have been down there a whole lot longer than me, but the White River tailwater in Arkansas is what has sort of got me into where I am now. From a, bucket list sort of destination point that I knew I had to get to making me as obsessed as I am with streamers, fly tying, fly design, and just getting after it. And part of that is just because of what happens down there in the winter months on that tailwater. It brings all of the best streamer guys in the world basically over there, and you get to meet them. You get to fish some seriously big water for some seriously big brown trout, and it's pretty cool. Again, way off on a tangent. That's sort of a whirlwind tour of my travels in the last 4 years, but that's kind of where I've got with my streamer fishing, basically.
I want to talk a little bit about Arkansas because I've read about it. I've seen multiple videos and stuff. I know like the streamer fishing is really big there. I guess, would you say that the trout fishing in Arkansas mostly happen in the winter? Because it's so compared to us, it's so south that we're thinking like we're fishing here. We're like, oh, maybe we'll leave the trout alone because it's warm. It's Arkansas. It's like 7 hours of a drive south.
21 and a half hours.
Wow.
That's a little further.
Never mind.
The first need of it is ice. It's funny. Everyone should ask the same question. How the hell are the trout not dead in Arkansas when it's rattlesnake and armadillo land and it's like 100 and whatever degrees during the summer?
I guess
Desert,
tailwater, right? It's because of the tailwater, and the water
doesn't
change too much.
That's what it is for sure. It's a dream. It's a match made in heaven for me, and it's such an amazing place full of incredible people. You never think it, when I first started getting on and started sort of noticing, what the hell is this Dally's Ozark fly fisher and what's the White River? And what kind of river is it? How the hell is there all these trout down there? And what is this love fest where I see like Kelly Gallup and everything going down? And it's such a cool place. But yes, answer to the question is these trout thrive. It's massive. It's massive water, and it's got a massive couple reservoirs above it that dump a massive amount of cold water into it through the winter. It's a tailwater, so and it's different from the Grand River in that their main priority and focus is power gen. So the border between Missouri and Arkansas is where Bull Shoals Reservoir is, which is the lake that feeds the White River that flows into Bull Shoals Lake in Missouri, and right at the border dumps into Arkansas below the dam of the Bull Shoals Dam. The tailwater that will hold trout, I guess you could say it's at least probably 80 to 100 miles of trout water below that dam. But it's big, and it's all geared around power generation to feed power down to Texas and the hotter Arizona states and stuff like that is the way I understand it.
Oh,
but
wow.
It's highly variable when you have a river that big. Like we're talking normal summer flow on the Grand River is 4 cubic meters a second. Unweightable water on the Grand River would probably be about 22, 23 cubic meters a second. In January and February, when Texas is cold and when people need power, that river and if there's enough water in the reservoir, that river will flow peak day at 26 to 28,000 cubic feet a second. So it's just massive,
That's crazy.
And that's why that amount of water can just put a lot more cold water into the system, and it's a beautiful fishery. It's really cool.
Well, even just looking at, even just Googling it here, like there's a bunch of fly shops not too far apart from each other. It looks like tons of water and everything else too.
There's room for everyone.
Yeah, lots of room. There's basically in the vicinity of Bull Shoals Dam, there's the town of Cotter, which is where Daly's fly shop is. There's several in the area. They're all good. There's tons of guiding operations. There's another tributary about 25 minutes to the southeast called the Norfolk, which is another tailwater, power gen tailwater that's about 6 miles long that drains from the Norfolk Reservoir into the White River. And it's pretty awesome, but it's more sort of double Grand River size, but when they're generating power, that thing's drift boat only and hang on. And it's actually got resident cutthroat in it, big ones. Wow. Tons and tons of rainbows and wild browns for sure. And the streamer bite on that river is pretty crazy. So when the white's like really big or not generating power, some days the Norfolk will be, so you can fly down there and try and get a spot in there and fish that 6 miles of water, and it's pretty banging. But yeah, lots of fly shops, and there's Little Red River in Arkansas that's another sort of tailwater that's a couple hours south of that is also a sort of trophy brown trout water. It's just an amazing place. There's so much to get your head around. In the summer months, and even some last year when we were in the winter months, there is wadeable water, wadeable times a day where you can actually go in at accesses and wade the river. Within a given 2 hours, it could go up 8 feet, and you're in a boat with a 40 horsepower jet motor on the back kind of thing to get to target browns. Like, it's just insane.
So it's not like wading friendly. It's really like from drift boats or power boats, mostly.
Yeah. Yeah, the standard, sort of the go-to boat that we see down there. It's so funny. The first time we went down there, we had an 11-foot two-seater Hyde without a motor on it, and we went down there. The first time we went was in March, early March, and they had sort of record flood year, and there was a lot of generating power going on, and we hit it. The 3 or 4 days we were down there, it was about 15,000 CFS, and we were able to fish it in our boat, but we looked like an ant,
Yeah, exactly.
in the water. We got chirped by a lot of Texans and a lot of people from Arkansas calling us the cute guys in little white pram.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
but the standard boat down there is so funny. The White River has been a trout fishery forever, and it's a standard 20-foot sort of flat hulled John boat and sort of big deck sort of thing, like a big giant duck boat, basically with a jet motor on the back.
It's kind of like an hybrid between a drift boat and a power boat, right? Like, because I've seen these boats and I'm like, where do you get those? Like, I've never seen those ever.
John boat?
No, not the John boat, but like these boats.
Oh, right.
They're like they're flat, kind of like a drift boat, but they have a motor. Like here, you see a lot of drift boat. You go to Quebec, you see a lot of like freight canoes. It's like something, when I've started to Google it, I've never seen before. And I was like, these look badass.
Yeah. They're so cool. I mean, they can track and they can motor up through water that we would be knocking rocks on in a drift boat even. It's crazy. Most like some of the predominant boat companies that I know of are Shawnee is one of them. They actually are one of their main offices, I believe, is in Cotter, Arkansas, right on the White, and they're pretty impressive boats. It's like a tournament bass boat, basically, like a big Ranger or a Skeeter or whatever. But they're just designed to run rivers, and you throw a couple guys in there with a guide, and you're set up on oars as well. So you motor up, you power down, you float down, you fish, and you motor up, and you can go wherever you want, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You do have a drift boat as well, right?
Yeah, so we upgraded after we got just kind of chirped around a little bit down in Arkansas. We realized that, you know what, our boat is our little hide was super handy. We shed a tear when it left the driveway. Jay and I kind of split on our boat because we could take our boat and carry it into any water that all the full-size drift boats can't get to for steelheading in the fall in our rivers. So it was super versatile. The wives, unfortunately, wouldn't let us have two, and we decided it's way more important to be, safe on the White and wherever we're going to be traveling. So we stepped it up. So now we are running an older but a pretty cool Clacker Craft drift boat, and we have a pretty shitty old motor on the back, but we actually have a motor now, so we look a little bit more legit when we're down in Arkansas.
And like you mentioned, you use it in Arkansas, but in Southern Ontario, when I see, like, people say the Grand River is a big river, but I'm from just outside Quebec City, and a big river, it's not necessarily the same for me than it is for people from Southern Ontario. Where's the opportunity in Southern Ontario to get down on a drift boat and drift? Because I've seen it on the Grand River, but I feel like it looks like they're a little bit out of place sometimes.
Yeah, it's totally out of place. I mean, this year on the Upper Grand River, which was what I would consider our tailwater section where there's browns, we've had, I would say 3 or 4 weeks this season where you can put a full-size drift boat in the Gorge Park and go down to Westmont Rosa or 86 Line. You can't do it on a regular year, and you kind of look like a bit of a dummy putting your boat in anywhere where there's going to be waiting traffic, but it's doable. The Lower Grand, I don't fish it a lot because I have a hard time. I like to be non-urban when I fish, especially when I'm steelheading, so I predominantly will target more the northern and the western tribs.
I feel you for that, especially as the photographer of the group. When we go to Lower Grand, I'm like, well, you guys need to catch fish because this landscape fucking sucks.
Yeah. I have a hard time driving down the 401 at 4 a.m. to go fish a credit, and that's just me. I know that when I'm actually in there, it's a beautiful fishery. There's some really great scenery down there, similar to the Brawny, similar to the Lower Grand. But for me, I'm just drawn. Part of my thing is the vibe, right? Part of my thing is the confidence and where my friends are. And when I'm steelheading and I'm dragging the boat somewhere, I'm usually heading north, or I'm heading to the Maitland or the Saugeen primarily.
Yeah.
I put a drift boat in the Beaver before, and that was quite an escapade. But
I heard the Beaver can be pretty tricky. river to wade, and I can imagine
it's
on
a
a
tough
boat.
one to navigate, especially in a drift boat.
Yeah.
In the spring because it's pretty unpredictable. But you guys know what's the advantage of having a drift boat in southern Ontario when you're steelheading in the fall and you got big water on the Maitland or on the Saugeen or on the Grand,
Beating the crowd.
3 a.m. to leave Toronto, and you're going to show up at 5, and there's going to be 2,000 guys.
Yeah,
I know.
Shoulders at the spot that you thought, holy shit, if I got up this early, I should be able to get a spot.
Yeah.
When I first moved to
No, go ahead.
Oh, when I first moved to Toronto, I took the subway up to the Humber. Actually, that's my very first line in the water. That's when I caught my first steelhead ever in my life. But and then so I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna go back, like Humber River, downtown Toronto. You'd be like, there is no one around me. I drop a line, and then 5 minutes later, there's like 5 roll baggers, center pinners, like casting on top of my line, and so I beating the crowds.
So
it's key.
It's so cool though. Can you where else in the world can you leave your condo or your apartment or your townhouse or whatever and pack your shit and get on a subway and go further into the city to catch steelhead?
It's a good point.
That's so true. Like,
where does that happen?
Yeah.
Like my very, very, very first steelhead was literally 5 minutes of a walk of a subway station. It's
so cool.
It's ugly. The surrounding is ugly. There's nothing romantic about it, but it's in the bag.
It's so cool, and that's one of the things that Sesta and Rob at Drift Outfitters does so well is he supports the local clubs that are trying to like keep the urban fishery kindled. I love it. I'm all for it. I mean, I've been down to the Credit after, during the extended part of the season post January, and I'm down there. I'm like, where the hell even am I? Like, other than the 403 bridge or whatever, like expressways going over my head, you really wouldn't know the difference. And for me, it's a fortunate thing though, right? Like I'm separated. I'm equally, if I left my house and headed north in the same amount of time, I could be in a perfectly traffic-free float on the Saugeen than if I drove down to the Credit. So I'm fortunate. I'm even more central than you guys are in Toronto.
Oh, I feel like Fergus is, it's definitely, it's like in the center of it all. You can hit the Georgian Bay. You can go south close to Erie. Or you can go west. It's really like the center of it all. Really, it's the center of the world.
Yeah, it really is. It's so cool. But yeah, I mean, in an hour and 20 minutes for me to be up on Georgian Bay, I'm going to choose that over battling 6 a.m. traffic to drive down to the Credit. Even if I know that the Credit's banging and the flows are perfect and it's on the downward spike and clarity's good and viz is good and fish are in, I'm going to go swinging with my buddy on the Saugeen and Walkerton, knowing that we might hit a few and, crack a few beers and have a good time.
Yeah, totally.
I know that's steelheading though. Brown trout's a little different. I would probably go fish a ditch and a culvert in Toronto if that's where the big browns were, and that's just different fish, different mentality, right?
Yeah, we've been trying to figure out the upper Credit for a while. It's starting to work, but it definitely took some patience.
Yeah. Well, just like everything.
Fishing pressure, right? Like these fish, you go there at 6 a.m. There's 3 pickup trucks already there before you. So,
but certainly one thing I think I want to do more of just for fun is using streamers. And I know like at Rob Drift Outfitters, What the Fly competition there, you did a streamer presentation. You were tying up some streamers and talking about streamers, beautiful flies. And I don't know, I was thinking maybe you could talk a bit more about streamer fishing for trout specifically, because bass, pike, all that stuff, like, oh man, it's so fun. I love like being in Eastern Ontario, always fishing bass, pike, even walleye on streamers was so much fun. But trout, I still haven't done it. I'm trying to match the hatch and, do things like that, actually pay attention to the insect life and stuff, and learn the hatches. But there's something about streamers it just seems like so much fun. Yeah,
it's it depends. It depends if you like to tie flies too, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't, then, for me, it's hand in hand. Being able to tie flies and being able to design a fly that fuels my passion when I'm on the water is just sort of the holistic package. There's so many totally insane custom tires in North America that you will never have to suffer as a result of not being able to tie flies. So don't get me wrong. It just, I love, as I said, when I was a kid, I was a wiener and I was collecting bugs in sieve nets before I really fished all that much, you know. Yeah. Same thing with the art of streamer fishing, tying and design. There's just so many elements to it. It just blows my mind. It's got me obsessed. You know, where do you start? Yeah. Where do you start with streamer fishing? Do you start with the daily new innovative materials that are coming out on the market? Like the industry right now, the tying industry is like nothing I've ever seen in 25 years of seeing it.
Oh, it's, I think in all the fly tying, the streamers is the one that I think have evolved so much more than all of the others. Because like from my dad's muddler minnows, white muddlers, and then the normal muddlers too. Like today, you can buy skulls and then dumbbell high, and so like where do you start? Where do you stop? Where I think it's been crazy. It's easy to get lost.
Yeah,
if you start thinking about streamers.
And that's where it intimidates a lot of people. I would argue that tying an effective and productive streamer, it could be simpler or as simple as tying, like, put it this way. Let's say you want to tie a 5-inch articulated sculpin and you don't know how to tie one, but you got some marabou and you got some flash and you got an idea of how a fly like this should swim. And I would challenge you to tie me a perfectly tied size 16 Adams. By the end of it, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to have a more fishable streamer than you are that Adams. Yeah. But on the opposite end of it is overwhelming. It's intimidating as shit, man. Like there is so many incredible and innovative and original and productive tires out there to look at that you feel pretty small pretty quick. And it's because this type of fishing has been consumed me. I mean, you can talk to my wife in the next room. It's beyond passion. It's borderline insanity. It can be overwhelming, and it becomes you have to be able to reground yourself and come back to ground zero and put it into perspective and take that fly box full of random concoctions and put it aside or throw it out and say, what are the foundations for the type of fly I'm trying to make? Who are the guys that started these foundations and what did they tie in? Sometimes it takes me to spend a month going back down to tying Kelly's Zoo Cougar, you know, and cranking out some of those so that I kind of reprogram my brain because, you know, during certain times of the year, the more you're on social media and seeing some of the stuff that's coming off Vices, you can get on a tangent pretty damn quick, and you can get your brain just wrapped up so fast that you're either spending money on materials that you don't know how to use, you're tying stuff that isn't going to catch the fish that you're fishing for, you're trying to make a fly that's going to look good on Instagram, you know. So there's all that kind of stuff that will consume you. And I'm fortunate enough to have a really good buddy that, you know, my friend Jay, him and I ground each other with it. I've got him into fly tying, and he's come so far in the last few years and got even more insane with materials and flies and knowing things that it can get overwhelming, and we gotta ground each other. And, you know, think about where this thing all started.
It's good to have someone that tells you, like, hey, that doesn't make sense. Like, stop it.
Yeah, just tone it down a notch. You don't need $800 in Senyo's laser dub type stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We try to tell that to Yelma all the time, but he just tells us to screw off, and he buys all this fancy stuff, you know?
Yeah. All these fancy waders and boots. Start catching fish.
it's all good because that's the passion, man. Why not spend money on that kind of stuff? And
Totally.
that's the other end of it too, which my wife again in the next room could say, well, yeah, you just got a package worth a couple $100 of some feathers and fur and some synthetic crap that's flashy that the cat eats, but you could have dished that out at the bar last night. So, it's kind of dorky, but it's kind of real too. It's something that, when you get into it like that, helps your lifestyle for sure.
That's a good point for sure. Yeah.
You just have to say, but I'm faithful. I'm fly tying. I'm spending all that money, but I'm faithful.
Exactly.
I feel like the fly tying thing is a whole other show altogether. Like that, God, you could probably go on for days with tying streamers and everything else.
Yeah, it's so funny how these things go, how you can just start talking about something you love so much, but fly tying is a whole other show altogether. And
oh yeah.
All I can say is that I'm hard at it. I hope to do more of it. I hope to be out there with helping out the shops and doing stuff with Rob. We've been talking about some potential stuff coming up in the winter, which should be pretty exciting. Probably all going to be streamer related for me. I'm going to start, I start doing tying demos and stuff usually in the winter, but this year I kind of want to start a little early and get into some shops and do some sort of hype around steelhead flies and tying some stuff like that, some of my own patterns and stuff that I like and get in there in the fall.
Hell yeah.
Rather than wait till it's over and then try and keep people going, which is cool and needed because everyone starts to get excited for the countdown to trout season. But
yeah, exactly.
We can talk again for sure.
Oh yeah, man. And
streamers we could talk for a long time. You don't want to get me started right now.
We should have a panel.
We'll save that for our 6-hour episode when we got you back on. We'll talk streamers. It'll be 3 parts.
Yeah, when we're drinking coffee instead of beer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, right on, man. Shit, I think that's like pretty packed show right there.
Yeah. Oh my God, so much stuff.
That's a lot of info.
Lots of content.
Because I know you're a guide. You're a guide mostly on the Grand. Do you guide anywhere other rivers as well, or?
Yeah. This year with my new baby at home, my first love of my life.
Hey, congratulations for that.
Yeah, congrats.
That's awesome.
Thanks. She's just about 10 months.
You don't just tie flies now. You make living things.
Make babies, yeah. Yeah, we have one, and apparently we're having only one right now, but we'll see.
Okay.
I've stepped out of my guiding a little bit. I've done a handful this year. Previous years, and again, I have a full-time job as a program manager for an engineering company in town in Fergus. But I would manage, a dozen to 2 dozen guides I would take the time to do a year, and it's sort of this past year, just with Grace being born, I've just put it kind of back because I feel so progressive in my fishing and tying that I want to learn more. I want to do more. I want to get more consistent and everything else that I've stepped away. But I do guide steelhead both in the boat and wading. Primarily, if we're in the boat, I'm going to want to guide on the Saugeen, or I'm going to want to guide on the Maitland. I know that water relatively well, not nearly as well as the veterans that are out there, but I do it. I'm pretty productive. Prior to streamer fishing, I was a nymphing guide through and through, and if the smaller tribs are on, I will guide on those. So the Big Head, the Beaver River in the spring, some of the other smaller stuff like the 9 Mile, all those trips, they're all great. They're so much fun, and I've guided on a lot of them now, and hope to continue doing it. As Grace gets older, she can maybe go on my back in a backpack or something. But right now, I've sort of put it aside. I think I've done 5 or 6 just for clients that I've known over the years. So
yeah, she's gonna grow up being a great angler and an outdoor enthusiast for sure.
For sure, yeah. If I have anything to say about it, she will be outside at the very least. I don't care what she's doing out there as long as she's not inside.
Absolutely, yeah. Get them outdoors.
And if someone wants to book you or talk to you, where's the best place that they can reach you?
Best place would be just to message me on Facebook or Instagram. Instagram, I think I'm Groves Nick. and Nick Groves on Facebook. I guide exclusively through Robbie and Scotty's shop at Grand River Outfitting in Fergus. You can always call them. Ask for me. I don't guide independently, only through them, and that's for obvious reasons, through insurance and sort of status like that. So, yeah, I'm available.
That's
if I like you, I'll guide you. How about that?
Right
this
on.
year.
Yeah, that'd be good. If you have a little bit of an opening, you let me know, and we'll drive down to Fergus.
Well, you guys have been so great in having me on this podcast, and you've obviously shown me support. I think, Gabe, you and I had talked last year about getting you out in the boat for at least a bass float or something. We'll make it happen. We'll
we have to make it happen. I've been dreaming about it. I've actually never fished from a drift boat. I've been waiting my whole life. Like I said, I've been fishing since I'm a kid. But my dad never owned even a canoe. So I've been a waiting dude my whole life. I guess I'm just
cool.
I'm a bum.
Well, then we can actually catch some fish too if we're out with somebody who's catching fish.
Who knows? Yeah.
Hey, tell you what, we'll have to book. We'll get something sorted out for the fall. And if you like to wade, I'll just row you down to each run and we can swing through. How about that? We'll go swinging in the fall.
Right
I love wading. I love being on a boat. I
Sounds
love
good to
drowning. Anything. If it's on around water, I'm down.
Well, we'll talk. I'm
Awesome.
available, guys. The fall should be good. Let's pray that we get that, golden season of miracles that happen with the weather, with the flows, with the temps, with everything, with the mood of the steelhead, and everything comes together and we get a good season.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
We're hoping for that.
I have a pretty good feeling because last year there was no rain, and the fall season it just continued on that path. There was just no water, but it's been so rainy this year that I'm hoping. I don't know. We'll see, but I'm hoping for a good steelhead season this year.
It's going to be good.
Touching wood.
It's 60 to 75% of any kind of fishing is to do with your confidence.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it at that. I would say that tomorrow's going to be fun. Think about this. Tomorrow, within an hour of each other, you guys are going to be looking for browns. There's going to be guys targeting bass, pike, and muskie. And I'm going to be up catching specks and brook trout. So think about that. All within an hour of us, we can do all of that.
Yeah. Mitch's going to look down on me because I'm going to look for some carp.
Oh, carp. Sorry.
Especially in that spot that I will not name.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing, yeah.
Hey, Nick, thanks so much for talking with us. It was awesome.
No problem, guys. It was actually quite good. I enjoyed it, and we should do this again.
Oh, hell yeah, that'd be awesome. And next time we can talk
sure.
about we can talk about streamers and trout streamers and everything else and get into that whole thing.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Beauty. Well, thanks very much, man.
Okay, guys.
All right.
All right, thanks, and enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Yeah, and have fun tomorrow. We'll see you.
See you.
Bye.
Everybody listening, if you want to check us out on social, or SoFly on Facebook and the SoFly crew on Instagram, check us out. You can find different images and stuff we're up to, and also videos. We're getting a little bit more into videos. We just did a video for Temagami Outfitting Co. in Northern Ontario, Temagami, and that was killer. Thanks again, Eric, for coming up. That was our last show. Check
It was
it out.
so good.
That's so much fun.
That Temagami region is ours now. I think we're going to go back.
Love it up there. But thanks again, Nick, and thanks to you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.